Hi, welcome to HTML5 session. Now in this session we are going to discuss about the new changes which has come in HTML5, and one of those important changes are in form attributes and the form element called input attributes. So let us see about them. Now in HTML5 has several new attributes for the element called form and the element called input. So in the form element, the new attributes which has come for form are autocomplete and no validate. So these are the two new attributes which has been put by HTML5. Autocomplete, this is the new attribute for form element, and the another new attribute for the form element is no validate. So we'll see that what is the use of these two attributes for the form element. The use of autocomplete is that if you have typed something, then it will check if there is a similar word or something, and it will try to complete on its own. So if you turn autocomplete on, then if there was some value entered into this one, it will check that if the user has previously entered something, what is the possible values for that. So autocomplete. No validate. What it means is that if the input is of type text or email or URL website, then it will try to check whether that input is of really of email type or not. So there is a validation that we can say. So if you turn on, then autocomplete will be on, and this you have to put it inside the form tag in the beginning itself. So it like this: autocomplete equals to on, no validate equals to no validate. If you say validate, then it will say validate the type of the input. Like email, then it should be email. If it is text, then it should be text. So that is what it calls the two attributes for this one. Now let us try to run this code and see that how it looks like in a normal scenario. So what we are going to do is that we are going to create for this one a form into this one. So here I have a sample file called sample1.html, and this one looks like this. Very simple. There is a head, there is a title, head, body, hi, how are you. You can change this that I am testing HTML5 form, and inside this body we have written the body 2 times, so let us remove that. Here, so I am testing, and then there is a form here, and we will close the body tag like this. Okay, and then I will save this and see that how it goes. Now the important thing here is that there is autocomplete on and no validate. Now let us try to run this soft file into our browser. So this is sample1.html, and I will say just show me this. So it says I am testing HTML form, first name, last name, email. Now if I type here first name Raj Kumar and something like abcd at or abcd email id, let us enter, and if I paste submit, it goes to some page which is not found. That's okay, but the most important part was in this one, when I typed this one, it was not an email, right? But it still didn't say anything. Now what I will go in that one and I will check this no validate equals to validate, or I will just delete this one. Okay, and then I will say save, go to the same page, and then I will try to reload it, and then again I will do Raj Kumar abcd email like this, and then try to do submit. What it says, please enter an email address. How did it happen? It happened because you have put remove the validation no validate equals to true. Default value is true. When I said ki don't validate, it was not validating. If I remove that, now it is validating. So that is the concept of no validate and autocomplete. Okay, so that is what I was trying to explain. If I remove this, then it will not validate if it is an email address or not. But if I keep it, if I remove it, it will validate it whether it is an email address or not. If I put it like this, then it will not validate whether it is an email address or not. So that's all it is doing it. Now this autocomplete, you can do it at the form level. You can do it also at the input level. Autocomplete equals to off means it will not do autocomplete for this one. So those are the two attributes for form in HTML5. Now let us see what is next. Now there are input attributes. What is input attributes is that there is an element called input inside the forms, and those are what we discuss about. So there is new attributes for input called autocomplete. Autocomplete means it complete if you have previously typed something. Autofocus, it will focus on that one. Form, form action, form encryption type, form method, form no validate, and form target. Now these are the things which are very important to understand that why HTML5 has brought this. They have brought the concept because of they wanted to say that in a single form, can you submit it to two different action? Earlier, every form is submitted with one action. Now, let us assume that I have a form which looks like something like this. Okay, so I have a form. Okay, now and I have some text box here, another text box, another text box, and I have a submit button here. Now, can I have a two submit button here? Is it possible? In old HTML form, it was not possible. Now in HTML5, we can have two form, two submit button, and you can say that I want to submit, and both will have a different action. So that is what the concept it brings. Now let us see some example. And it will have height and width only with input types you can have, and it also have a new attribute called list, min and max, and then multiple input types, email and file. Now pattern is another example of attribute of input type. Placeholder. Placeholder means that by default it will put something there. Now let us see all of these with some sample code. Required means you must enter that data. If you put the input type as required, then the data must be entered into that. A step means if you want to enter the data in a particular frequency like 2, 4, 6, 8, then you can use this attribute called step. So height and width is the input height and width. Min and max, basically if you want the input should be minimum 5 and maximum 200, then you can do that with this one. And this only works with the input type called number, range, date and timeline, date time. Now pattern is that input should follow a particular pattern, alphabetical. You want the only alphabet to be entered. You want only numeric to be entered. So that is where you can use the concept called pattern. Placeholder is the default values you want in that input. Required means the user must enter that input. Step means in the frequency. Now if you go back to HTML4 days, all of these was possible to do by writing extra programming, that is JavaScript. But in HTML5, you don't need to write any code to do all of this validation. HTML5 will provide by default all of this validation. Okay. Now let us see those two attributes called form and form action. How does it look like? Now form and form attribute, what it means is that a regular form action, it will happen. It is regular form, it is there. Now you can put a input element outside this. This is outside this. This input element is outside this form, but you can still include it inside this form by saying that please include this input element into this form 1. So what it means is that this whole input element is included inside this form because of this attribute called form equals to form1. Now when you will press submit, it will take the data which you entered here as well along with this one. So let me just repeat. You can declare an input element outside the form and still you can include inside the form. Okay. The benefit is that this one you can dynamically write a code so that in some cases it will include inside this, in some cases it will not include this. If this form equals to form was not possible, then in normal case you would have to declare two forms, one with this element and one without this element. But now in HTML5 you don't have to declare two forms. You can just declare one form and you can write a logic that if a particular logic is valid, then include this input element inside this form, otherwise don't include. And that you do by writing here form equals to form1. So that is the importance of form attribute. Now let us see what is the use of form action attribute. Here form action attribute is used to declare that there is multiple action from a different button. So see, if you see here, there is one submit with value equals to submit. There is another submit. So there are two submit buttons in the same form. Now it was not possible again in the HTML4 days to have two submit button. In HTML5 you can have two submit button, and when this will be submitted, this will trigger this action and this one will trigger this action. So now you can define two different actions for two different submit button, and same form can be sent to two different places. Okay, so this is the use of form action to have two different submit button with this, and this text will show submit as admin, this one will say just a regular submit. You can put any text here, any action page here, and this one. So if you see that this is a different page, this is a different page. Okay, now use of form action is to have two submit button for the same form. So that is the use of this one. Now let us see what is list and step attribute. How do you use list attribute in HTML5 and how do you use step attribute in HTML5? Here what you do is that you say input list browser. So it is like declaring a list variable. And this one you can put all the things like data list here, ID equals to browser. So inside the form, when I will put this list equals to browsers, that form will have all of this option. I can have two different form and each can be done the same way. Now let us see this, how it works. If I want to write a code here, so what I can do is that input list equals to some browsers. Okay, and here next you have to define is data list and ID will be browsers. So here data list ID equals to browsers like this, and here option here inside this option you have to put option value equals to something and close it. Equals to Chrome. You don't need a single value thing, so Chrome, Firefox, and IE. Okay, so this is the way I will put it. Now, if you see here, what we have done is that I have created here option value like this. Now this browser list, input list equals to browser, that you can use it inside your form. So put it here. Like this. Now what will happen that inside this form, you can use this list of browsers as a input form. So let us see that. And we'll go and check in the browser. Okay. And here you can enter Chrome, or you can enter, see, Firefox, or you can enter IE. How does it come like this? Because it knows that which one you are typing. Now the same thing you can do here. I can have another form and I can use the same list of browsers. So I do not have to create this data structure again for every form I want to declare. So it is a reusability of a list of data. Okay. Now here, if I want to add few more, let us assume I want to add Safari, Opera, or something. So I will add Safari, I will add Opera, and save it. And just to refresh. And then when I go here, you see when I type Opera, it comes automatically. How does it know that? What is that? Because that is the list you have provided to him. And if I type here something like ASAD and come here, asd.com something here, and I submit, right? Now this one you can do it, but it does not give you any indication that which one you want to do. So it is like a list of option it will provide you depending on that list of browser. So IE, if you type IE browser, so it helps you. So this is basically helping you to do the typing from a list of possible options. So this is one example of how list can be used. So you first declare the name of the input list browser, and then you create one data list. In that you put the browser, and this can be now used inside a form. Now next is step attribute. What is the use of step attribute? Let us assume that your input type is number, and you want the people to enter the number in the gap of 3, like 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Now how do you restrict that? That you can do if you put number 3. So now that input will not be taken anything other than starting from 0 with a frequency of 3. Now what you can do is that, let us test this one. Here I will say is that input type equals to number, I will say the some number, and input type equals to number, name equals to, give some name, I don't care. More important is step equals to, I will say 4. Okay. Now once I give this, just save it and let us refresh it. So now number is gear. I will enter something here, come here, and I try to enter 1. Okay. And enter here Firefox. Now here I have to enter like this, and you see that what is happening. it starts taking the number 4, 8, 12, 16, anything. So this increment, it happens is all between in the number of 4. So it does not take anything which is, you can put anything like 33 here, and that is fine, and it will submit. But when it will submit, it will say it is invalid value. Why it say invalid value? Because it is not in the sequence of 4. I say submit, it says invalid value. I say 4, it says done. So this validation check that it should be in the multiple of 4 is done by a simple change here, which says that step equals to 4. Change step equals to 5 and see what happens. Now reload. Some name, Raj, Kumar, and the number. Let us assume I enter here now 4 and enter here Chrome, enter here some ID, email id at email.com. Now, if I do submit here, what it says, invalid value, because that number is not a multiple of 5. Try with some other invalid value. Now, if I put here 25, it will be fine. It will not say anything. It will submit. So that is the idea of putting a step into HTML5. Now a lot of validation of input is done without writing any JavaScript. So that is what is the beauty of HTML5, that it lets you validate a lot of input without doing that. So if you go back, you see here there was a validation, here there was a different action which was submitted. Here it was including a input element which is outside form in an existing form. It is like adding one more input element. Here, to submit button. Next, we saw that how to create a list of set of data and reuse it in any form which I want. In a particular page, you can have 3 or 4 forms. In each of the form, you don't have to declare all these 5 browser. You can declare at one place and you can reuse it at all the forms just by saying input list equals to browser. Now step attribute we understood. It is when you want the user to enter the data in a particular frequency, like in a after every 2 number, every 4 number, every 6 number, that time you will use input type attribute step. Now another element, another attribute in the form elements is called required. What it means is that if you make a particular input type equals to required, then user must enter some data into that. He cannot leave it blank. This is CSS selector you can use for, but we'll leave it. Now next attribute which we are going to talk about in input itself is called email, URL, telephone, and placeholder. What it means is that if you want the user to enter a email or a URL or a telephone number and placeholder, then you must use these attributes. Okay. The example will be like this. Placeholder is this. So what it means is placeholder is the default value which you will have. So let us see that how placeholder works. You see this? My email at email.com. This is the default value it will show you when you are entering. Now here I can have Firefox, here I can have 5, here I can have Raj and Dan, and I can say submit. It will go fine. What was this? This was the default value that it will take if you don't want to enter anything. Okay. So that is what is all about placeholder. And type equals to telephone. You can say type equals to URL, type equals to email. By mentioning this type equals to, earlier it was only text and drop down or radio button. Those were the standard types. So HTML5 has added a lot of new elements for email and URL. Okay. Now here is the date attribute. Date attribute, it works is very simple. You can give the input type equals to date and name equals to date, and it will bring the calendar for you and you can use it. Okay. Variance is month, week, time, date time local. So all of this it will use. You can use month, you can use week, time, date time local. So in that format it will show you. By default it will show the month of this one. If you want date and time, then it will show date and time like this. If you just say date, then it will show like this. Okay. And right now, since HTML5 is still evolving, different browser have a different implementation and look and feel, but all of them does try to support these kinds of a attribute. Now next input element attribute is called pattern. What pattern means is, if I want, it is a concept of regular expression. You can go at this link and see it. I want that email, type is email, name equals to email, and I want to allow only these characters, capital A to G. I want only 0 to 9, dot, underscore, percent, plus, and hyphen. And then it should be, there should be ampersand before this, and then it should be all of this. Although this is not required, because by the time you say type equals to email, it will anyway do all this validation. But if in other cases, if you want to and make sure that a user enters a name, and name should not have alphabet, should not have a numeric, percent, underscore, hyphen, dot, then you can say that just this much. I want only capital letter alphabet. So your pattern match will do this. So user can enter only this much for the input. So this is called pattern matching in HTML5. Now there are few things called global attributes which we'll discuss very soon.